And hello, everybody. This is Corey from The Abundant Artist. And today, this month in August of 2019, is my 10-year anniversary of teaching artists how to sell their art on the internet. I am broadcasting on Crowdcast, Facebook, and Instagram this morning. So if I'm looking back and forth, it's because I'm trying to make sure that I address audiences in both places. So good morning, everybody. And today we're going to spend about 5 minutes talking about my second takeaway in 10 years of teaching artists how to sell their art online. So yesterday we talked about the idea that good art doesn't necessarily sell itself. If you want to watch that video, then you can head on over to our Crowdcast page and watch the video from the day before. If you're on our mailing list, you should also get an email with a link to show notes and transcripts where we have links to all of the resources that we talk about in the show. If you're over on Instagram, feel free to drop me a message if you have any questions or you need any of those links. So today, we're going to talk about knowledge and belief. So your mindset matters a lot. The starving artist is a thing that so many artists get caught up in to the point of doing silly things like running starving artist sales. And the thing is, I'm not a woo guy. I'm not somebody who believes in a lot of mystical things, but when you put your attention on something, it does tend to grow and expand just because of the fact that you're putting your attention there. So if you're doing things like talking about being a starving artist all the time, making jokes about it, having starving artist sales, naming your business after the starving artist, though that starts to tap into that psyche of limiting yourself and putting yourself in a box. And I never want to see that happen to people. So I would just encourage you, as you're going along in your art business, figure out ways to not do that. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today, when I talk about knowledge and belief, is just knowledge about what are your options. What are the things that you can do? Knowledge is relatively easy to come by, but for some reason, we still get new artists coming all the time who will email us and ask us pretty basic questions. So one thing I wanted to cover today is the 5 basic kinds of business models that you can have as an artist. And if you have questions and you're here in the chat and you're listening, feel free to post a question. Feel free to message me. I'm happy to take those questions while I'm here and maybe answer some questions later on today too. So the 5 business models. One is just selling your art in an art gallery. That's what everybody knows about. That's what everybody thinks of when they think about selling art. It's just giving the art to the gallery and then going off and selling it. Number 2, which is actually the most common form of selling art, is selling art directly to collectors. The majority of artists who sell their work don't sell it through galleries. They actually sell it direct to collector. This might be at an outdoor art show or on your website, anything like that. If you are on Crowdcast and you're having problems with connection, you might want to refresh the page. But the replay that comes through should be pretty good without being broken up. The third form of selling your art is selling prints and reproductions of your work. And the reason I break this out as a third option is it's a completely different group of people than the people who buy high-end original art. So it's a different business. Number 4 is commission work. And this is, number 4 is such a different business model that I think most artists actually shouldn't do it. Unless you really like being art directed and you like having people tell you what to do with your work and you like going back and forth on the particulars of the piece, you should not do commission work. And that's why I say a lot of artists, it's not a good fit. And then number 5 is licensing your work. Well, this is where you give your images to a company who then put your images on things like mugs or calendars or all kinds of things. And that may or may not be a good fit for you and your work. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about today was some examples of limiting beliefs, right? We talked about the starving artist already. Another thing, some other things that I see artists use as excuses a lot is, I'm not a technical person or I'm not a business person, which is basically just abdicating your power. You say, well, I don't know how to do this and I can't learn, so I'm not going to. Or I hate administrative work, which is something I've discovered the last couple of years is administrative work for a lot of people is code for I don't like doing this kind of work. So therefore I'm going to call it administrative so that it doesn't sound important. But administrative work can be anything from like literally just doing your accounts receivable and payable to actually marketing yourself, putting posters out or putting stuff on social media, any of that kind of stuff. The economy sucks. The economy doesn't suck right now. When I started The Abundant Artist, the economy sucked, but it doesn't suck now. It's going to suck again in a couple of years because recessions are cyclical. But the overall economy doing poorly has very little to do with an individual artist or an individual small business doing poorly or not. Saying things like, I don't have time and money. We all have the same amount of time. And there are lots of people who grow their businesses without a lot of resources. Money is really helpful, and having free time is really helpful. But if you continually tell yourself that you don't have time and money, that is a limiting belief. Another one is person X thinks I should do Y. My wife thinks I should do this. My brother thinks I should do this. My sister thinks I should do this. In the end, the only person who matters with your art business is you. It's helpful to get their buy-in. It's helpful to get families buy-in. But the reality is that it's really up to you, and your decisions come down to you. The other limiting belief, my art isn't good enough. We did an interview a few years ago with my friend Gwen Siemel where she said, art doesn't have to be better than mediocre to sell. And I still think that's true. I'm not saying that you should create crappy art and then go sell it. I don't think that at all. But the number of artists who, I'm going to shut my window here. Somebody's drilling outside. The number of artists who've been painting for 20 years and they are, incredibly skilled, who come to me and say, I don't know if I'm good enough to sell, is unbelievably high. It's just, there's a lot of artists who are really, really good who are too afraid. And that just goes back to those limiting beliefs. So if any of these limiting beliefs sound familiar to you, if you struggle with any of them, there's a couple of books that I would recommend you check out. One is a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. She's a social science researcher, and she talks about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Highly recommend you check it out. And then the other book is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, which talks about, the book is primarily about what she calls an upper limit problem, where when you get to a certain level of success, you prevent yourself from going further because you think that you're at your max. Both super interesting books. I'm over time, but my call to action for you today is examine your limiting beliefs and develop a strategy to cope with them. There's a few things that I like. Besides reading the two books that I recommend, I'm also a big fan of tapping. There's lots of tapping videos out there on YouTube. Carol Tuttle is a good one, but there's lots of them out there. Therapy is really helpful. I do therapy. Lots of people that I know do therapy. If your insurance covers it, it's awesome. It's a great way to sort of examine the ways that you limit yourself or sabotage yourself. And then accountability groups, mastermind groups, whatever you want to call them. We have accountability groups for professional artists at The Abundant Artist. If you want to go to our coaching page and check that out, we'll have links in the show notes. You can also form peer accountability groups where you check in with each other once a week to just see, where you're doing and give each other kudos and stuff like that. So, thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of what we've been doing here at The Abundant Artist for 10 years. It's been super fun and amazing to see all of the artists who have quit their day jobs come out and talk about, the ways that they've done that. Sarah Guthrie just quit her job last week. She announced that she's quitting her job last week. So congratulations to Sarah, and congratulations to all of you who are going out there and doing the work. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you again tomorrow.